Hey everybody, JEPPPPPYYY here, and what if I told you that there is an operator on attack that counters almost as many defenders as Twitch and even Thatcher? Now if you were to take any guesses, you probably couldn't think of anyone that even comes close to them. But I have one attacker that has the potential to hard counter 10 defenders and passively counters every defender in this game. And that attacker is Nokk. Now you may be wondering why I said that Nokk has the potential to counter 10 defenders. Let me tell you how I came up with that number. So what does Maestro, Echo, and Valk all have in common? They rely so heavily on camera surveillance. Okay, so I'm sure that you saw that one pretty easily, how Nokk can counter those operators pretty well. But what about the other 7 defenders I was talking about? Well, that's because there's this little gadget called bulletproof cameras. Now, bulletproof cameras are really good. I made a video not too long ago where I ranked every secondary gadget in Siege, and bulletproof cameras placed pretty well on the list. There are 7 operators that have the potential to bring these cameras, and they are Mute, Castle, Doc, Jaeger, Frost, Legion, and Vigil. All these operators see a lot of play in ranked, maybe besides Frost. Okay, so that's how we got our number of 10 defenders that Nokk can pretty much hard counter if they rely heavily on their primary or secondary gadgets to get information. Now she can also passively counter every other defender in the game simply by using her gadget. Now we all know that Nokk's ability is to go invisible to cameras and moves very quietly, but so many people sleep on Nokk and doubt her as a good operator, making me to believe that Nokk is one of the most underrated defenders in all of Siege. Now Nokk isn't like god tier by any stretch of the imagination, but I want to show you guys how she can be so much more useful than you actually think. You see, Nokk is probably the best attacker in the game to get sneaky flanks with or catch the defenders by surprise. Now I have seen Nokk way more often in my ranked games than I ever have before, and I think it's because more and more people now are starting to see the possible effectiveness that she can bring. I notice that whenever I know an enemy is playing Nokk, I feel like really anxious. Every time I whip out my phone to look at cameras, I can never truly trust what I'm seeing because she might be invisible. Also, I'm scared to give callouts to my teammates that a room or hallway is clear because, to be honest, I actually can't confirm 100% if that is actually clear. Now I actually had this happen to me a few days ago, but I wasn't recording at the time so I didn't get the footage. So here's a story. I was on cams as Maestro and I was calling out to a Vigil, one of my teammates, that 90 was clear on Villa. So then when the Vigil got my call out, he assumed that 90 was clear because I just told him that. So he was running from study back to 90 to cover more ground or get 90 control. I don't know what he was doing, but I told him that 90 was clear. So when the Vigil went to sprint from study to hold down 90, he died immediately because I didn't see there was a Nokk sitting there at 90 and she had her gadget activated when I checked the camera for the call out. So I didn't see her at all. Long story short, that Vigil started screaming at me and he became like super toxic because how did I not see the Nokk sitting there? But I don't know, I understand why he got so mad at me because I straight up just wasn't able to see her. It wasn't my fault, but he started screaming and becoming toxic nonetheless. So what he actually started to do is he started throwing the match and we ended up freaking losing at the end. So without that Nokk knowing, she won the game for them because I called out to a toxic teammate that a position was clear and she was just sitting there in 90 and I couldn't see her on the camera. So she got the kill on Vigil, leading to Vigil being super toxic and throwing the rounds. Actually, no, he threw the entire game. He didn't just throw the round. Now I know that that's like an extreme situation and I'm mad I forgot to record that because that honestly would have been so funny. Like it would have been a good clip for something for Instagram or whatever. But honestly, stuff like that happens. You can make the enemy start to argue or lose focus on the game just by playing Nokk. Now Nokk does have a couple weaknesses that she has that I think is one of the reasons why you don't see her a lot and her pick rate is really low, is because people are still afraid to use her or they don't really know how to use her well. So let's talk about some of those weaknesses right now. First off, I mean, this goes without saying, but possibly the biggest downfall of Nokk is the lack of an ACOG on her primary weapon. But I don't think she necessarily needs an ACOG. Like most of the time you are playing Nokk, you are going to be close to defenders in an attempt to like sneak up up on them. So there aren't many times where you're at like a extreme line of sight where you need to have an ACOG equipped if you're going to get the kill. Most of the time you're kind of weaving in and out through rooms, or you're going upstairs. Like most of the time with Nokk, you're going to be at close quarters. So I don't think her having ACOG is the worst thing in the world. Alright, so another weakness that she has is she does have the FMG9, which is one of the weakest attacker weapons out there. Like statistically, pretty much all the other attacker weapons are much better than FMG9. But if you were to do that same stat on the defender side, the FMG9 is actually really good for defense. Like it's one of the best defender weapons in the game, the FMG9. And Smoke has FMG9, but you never see it because the shotgun SMG11 is the way to go for him. Like that's the meta for Smoke. You run the deployable shield, the shotgun, and the SMG11. So you never really get a true feel of how strong the FMG9 can be on defense. I bet you if another defender were to have the FMG9, like if they were to rework a defender or add a new operator with the FMG9 on defense, you would see that gun be really good. So when Nokk enters the building and isn't on a super long line of sight, she has an even playing field with all the other defenders' weapons. Also, with the added benefit of her gadget, she actually has some really high fragging potential given the right situations. But other than the lack of an ACOG and not having a typical attacker weapon, I actually don't see any other real weaknesses for Nokk, like at all. Besides Legion Mines, Ela Mines, and your other typical trap gadgets, there isn't really any other operators that like hard counter Nokk. Now there are a lot of trap or crowd control gadgets that attackers have to deal with, but those are gadgets that every attacker has to deal with, and it affects them, not just Nokk. So why isn't Nokk's pick rate higher? If you look at the win delta and the pick rate charts that Ubisoft releases every season, we see that Nokk doesn't get picked a lot, like at all. I think I have a theory on why the majority of players never even consider bringing in Nokk when deciding which operators to bring for attack. I believe that the majority of people still see her as like a bad operator, like when she was first released in Operation Grim Sky. Because let's be honest, when she first released, she was awful, like terrible. The FMG9 was trash, it didn't get its buff yet, and she had really bad secondary gadgets as well. Well, since she has been released, she has been buffed a couple of times, mainly Ubisoft buffing the FMG9 and made it one of the best weapons on defense now, and actually a formidable weapon to use on attack side too. Also, they gave her frag grenades. Now this goes without saying that any attacker with frag grenades is automatically buffed, like they're that good. But for some reason, I feel like they fit Nokk really well. Like it just feels very natural for Nokk to have frag grenades, and it works very well for a gadget too. Now I've done this a couple times where I'll sneak up on an enemy on like a staircase or something and lob a grenade where you hear the enemy is like wrestling around or they're running around. You just lob a grenade. Now I feel like when you are able to be sneaky and quietly pull the pin of a grenade, it catches the defenders off guard when a frag flies out of like nowhere and takes them out. So what are some things Ubisoft can do to increase her pick rate without making her like overpowered? Well, I'm sure it's tricky because we don't want Nokk to become like oppressive. Honestly, I feel like she's in a balanced state right now. I don't think she's too weak nor too strong. I think it was the right move to give Nokk an SMG, not an AR, and I feel like it fits her playstyle pretty well. To be honest, I think she might get to be too strong if she did have an ACOG. Who knows? Maybe Ubisoft should test this weapon attachment on her with the test server on PC. An idea I hear thrown around a lot is to give her either Jackal's PDW or Bandit's MP7 as another option for a primary. Again, I think Ubisoft should try this or something like this in the test server, because why not? I mean, it's no rank is being involved. I think the test server should be used more often than it is. Like for like drastic changes like this where you're like, hey, you know, who knows if this operator becomes overpowered or whatever. Put it in the test server and let real people try to work on it. Maybe it'll be better for the game, or maybe it's something where it's like, oh, good thing we didn't add that. I think Ubisoft should use a test server more. So until Ubisoft actually implements it in either a test server or an update where they give her an ACOG for the FMG9, or they give her a better weapon, we'll never know if she'll become OP until that actually happens. And let's be honest, the PDW and the MP7 are amazing weapons, so it might make her too strong, but we'll just have to wait and see if Ubisoft will make any changes like that in the future. Well, that's all I got for you. Now it's your turn to tell me something. Do you think Nokk is too weak, or is she in a balanced state right now? You can let me know by leaving a comment down below. Now, if you did enjoy the video, make sure to leave a like and subscribe with notifications if you're new. Now, with all that that being said, JEPPPPPYYY out.